G'day and welcome back to Reality Check Q&A, where you get to ask me the hard questions. It's the time of the week I fear the most. There's always some curly question that puts me on the back foot. And here to ask them, my friend and colleague, producer Meagan Ourada. G'day Meagan, how are you today?
Great, Ross. How are you?
Very well, very, very well. Fire away. Let's hit me
Okay,
with
you
some of
got
those
it.
excoriating questions.
All right, we will start with Rod, who's got some comments about NASA. Dear Ross, recently Dr. Gregory Rogers, a former NASA chief flight surgeon and Air Force major, has given public testimony detailing an event from 1992 where he claims he was shown CCTV footage of a craft he describes as a quote flying saucer inside a hangar at Cape Canaveral. Most remarkably, he states the craft bore a U.S. Air Force insignia. However, his story has received surprisingly little in-depth coverage compared to other whistleblowers. My question for your Q&A is, would you consider investigating his claims further and potentially interviewing him?
You're absolutely right. His story is important. I met Dr. Gregory Rogers very briefly at Contact in the Desert in May this year. He's a lovely bloke and I find him very persuasive. I heard him speak and I think the story he tells is very important. And frankly, anyone of his stature, I mean, he was a former chief surgeon or such like for NASA at Cape Canaveral. That's a very senior position. The fact that he's willing to speak out and say what he saw says an enormous amount. And basically, my one issue with what he says is he's not saying he saw directly a craft. He's saying he saw CCTV of a craft, which is the point, a very, very important point, because a lot of people, a lot of debunkers and skeptics have suggested that he was just shown a fake video or that, how can he be certain that what he saw was real? I'm reasonably confident that there are such craft being operated using US Air Force insignia. And the reason why I believe Dr. Rogers is because of what I've been told by a source who frustratingly won't go on camera, but who did tell me a story about what he saw at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. And it was very, very similar. It was a gigantic elliptical craft, massive, apparently 20, 30 meters wide, hovering in a clearing at Eglin Air Force Base. It's clearly being attended to by both uniformed and suited men. And in the moment that he was standing there looking at it, as he was having a covert cigarette hidden away from view, he literally saw the object blink from sight. Literally, he blinked and it disappeared. It was that fast. It disappeared. There was a momentary shudder of the trees, presumably by the displacement of air underneath the object. But whatever it was some kind of craft using a propulsion system that we know not what, which was being operated at a US Air Force base in Florida. So I've got enough data points to tell me that what people like Dr. Gregory Rogers are saying is accurate. And I do think that we need to start taking these allegations seriously. The possibility that the United States is operating ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles. I cite also the Mike Herrera story, where Michael Herrera, a young US Marine, was on a patrol in Indonesia during a civilian crisis and evacuation during a disaster, and he came across a craft hovering in a clearing that was clearly being protected, guarded by paramilitary US accented military personnel. They weren't very friendly to him either. So why do I take Dr. Gregory Rogers seriously? Because there is a plethora of information to suggest that there's something to this. At some stage I'd love to get Dr. Rogers onto Reality Check. I guess what I'd like to do is take the story further. We try on the program to report what's being reported, and I do think it's important to acknowledge good men like Dr. Rogers who've come forward and given their evidence. But when they've been, as he has actually been fairly widely interviewed across a whole breadth of different podcasts and shows. I'd like to try and find a new angle, and we always try and find a new way into the story. And I've got one in mind, and at some stage I might bring him on.
Okay, we will go next to an email from Giuseppe. Hello, thank you for your hard work on the UFO subject. Have you tried CE5 contact yourself? If so, how many times and have you gotten any results? I was able to get results by myself after a few failed attempts, but after that it became quite easy. It became quite easy and common. I would recommend Greer's CE5 protocol, which is quite simple and easy to learn.
Okay, CE5, for those of us who don't know, is Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, where purportedly, using meditative, telepathic, psychical techniques, one is able to get oneself into a position where you can invite, perhaps summon, a non-human intelligence or craft or orb or whatever it is to come into your view. And have I done it? I've certainly tried it. I haven't done it successfully. In fact, I've been a miserable failure. But I certainly have witnessed it. I've witnessed it now twice. I saw it only about probably 7 or 8 weeks ago in northern Victoria at a place called Rutherglen, in a place called Jaya Sanctuary, run by an Australian called Peter Maxwell Slattery. And it's quite funny, actually. Peter said to me during the daytime, he said, I've got a feeling we're going to see stuff tonight. And we were standing in darkness, looking out probably to the west from his beautiful property. And as we were standing there, he was meditating and inviting them to come. And he's done a lot of work like this at Mount Shasta in California. And I was skeptical, to be perfectly honest, and maybe my skepticism's part of the problem. But as I watched, there were clearly dots that became orbs that moved closer and closer towards us, in some cases hovered just behind trees, probably no more than a few hundred feet in front of us. And I can't explain it. They were moving erratically. They weren't satellites, they weren't planes, they weren't drones, they weren't fireflies, they weren't birds. They were some kind of object that appeared to respond intelligently to Peter's invitations for them to come closer. And on a couple of occasions when he invited them to pulse up, that was the kicker for me, they literally flashed. I can't explain it. And I've seen the same thing before. I think I've talked about this before at Esalen, which is just down the coast from San Francisco, a beautiful place. If you ever get the opportunity to visit, it's a serene location sitting on the Pacific Ocean, high above the Pacific Ocean, run by a lot of beautiful people who spend their days meditating and thinking about spiritual things. It was a privilege to be invited there. And I was there with one of the psionics who's been now involved with Skywatcher. And he actually said to me at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, while it was still daytime, he said, Ross, we're going to see a blue orb tonight. And he even predicted it might be hexagonal or octagonal. I think he said hexagonal. Anyway, literally later on that night, we did. We saw a blue orb. Hundreds of people saw a blue orb hovering near a swimming pool where a lot of people were swimming naked. And it was right adjacent to the Pacific Ocean. And as people watched, it sank down onto the beach. And you could clearly see the blue phosphorescent hexagonal-shaped orb sitting on the beach. I can't explain it, but whatever it was, the person who summoned it told me that we were going to see it, and we did.
Okay, Russ, we will go to an email from David. Ross, could the secrecy surrounding this phenomenon be associated with the potential manipulation of human DNA? If non-human entities walk among us and have altered our genetic makeup, it raises the question of whether certain human populations might possess a higher proportion of non-human DNA than others. If this were the case, disclosure of such information could risk fueling eugenic ideologies or race-based conflict, potentially dividing humanity rather than uniting it. What do you think?
Okay. There is no hard scientific evidence, I'm told, to support the idea that there has been manipulation of the human genome. And it's interesting because I've read scientific papers that make this assertion, some of which I think might have been peer reviewed. I mean, there was a couple of years ago, I got very excited because there was one paper that was published in Eastern Europe which suggested that there were DNA strands in the human genome that appeared to show some kind of manipulation. And I asked Professor Gary Nolan about this, and he poo-pooed it and said he didn't think there was much to it. So officially, at least, science says that there is no evidence of manipulation, any artificial manipulation of the human genome. But as many who follow the UAP subject will know, it's a long-known allegation that NHI, whatever they are, beings from other areas have been manipulating the human genome and possibly hybridizing humans with alien DNA. I've never been able to see any evidence to support this. There's a friend of mine here in Australia called Bill Chalker, who's a reputable scientist who's done some great work in a book called The Hair of the Alien. And he interviewed a gentleman called Curry, who claimed to have actually been forcibly made to have sex with two Nordic women who turned up in his bedroom. And the interesting thing about this incredible story is that they found a hair from one of these alleged beings, which when tested showed all manner of extraordinarily weird DNA. Whatever it wasn't entirely normal human DNA. There's been an interview done by a friend of mine called Rhys Dalton Morgan, which basically tells this whole story, and you can go on and have a look at that. Rhys Dalton Moore. As for the claims of ancient genetic engineering, yes, okay, there are claims, the ancient astronauts theory, that posit that extraterrestrials, the Anunnaki from Sumerian days, genetically altered early hominids like Homo erectus to create Homo sapiens as a labor force. And this has been popularized in different shows and books, but essentially there's not a lot of evidence to support it. How do you prove something like this? You know, there's obviously claims that have been made by witnesses about such types of genetic manipulation, but really, I did some reading about this recently. There was a preprint by a molecular biologist called Max Myakashev-Rempel, and he analyzed 581 family DNA trios from the 1000 Genomes Project, and he alleged that approximately 2% showed non-parental insertions, large haplotype swaps on chromosome 3, which were inexplicable by natural means or inexplicable by pre-1990 human tech such as CRISPR, which does allow gene manipulation. And he made the assertion that this linked to alien manipulation, including pilot data from self-reported abductee families. Now, his claims have also been attacked and debunked and skepticized, so frankly, I don't know what to think. If anyone has any hard evidence of alien hybridization, I'm your man. Send it my way.
Ross, naked people swimming in pools and group Nordic sex. This episode's getting kind of crazy.
It sounds like fun, doesn't it?
Yeah, I thought this was a family show, but can't wait to see the comments on this one. Thanks a lot. Here comes Tim in our email. Dear Ross, thanks for your work. Have you investigated the Dodleston case, aka the vertical plane case? Best wishes, Tim.
Ah, the vertical plane case. It does sound like a UAP craft, but the Dodleston messages were these weird messages that somebody apparently had a very early home computer in an old farmhouse in the United Kingdom, and they left it on at night, and apparently they'd been having all manner of weird poltergeist-like phenomena. They'd found footprints, 6-toed footprints in the corners of the house in the dust, and there was all manner of weird paranormal telekinesis type phenomena that they couldn't explain. And apparently, this is the implausible part of this. Why would a guy from Elizabethan England know how to operate a home computer? That was always when I read this book, The Vertical Plane, it talked about how they found messages on their home computer in these Dodleston messages, which were a person writing in Elizabethan English prose. And apparently it was like there were linguists who are familiar with oldie Elizabethan English, and it was absolutely spot on accurate to the way that people spoke at that time. And whoever it was had typed on the computer a message angrily declaiming them for taking over his home. And the claim was made, or the suspicion was, that it was some kind of interdimensional portal where he was somehow able, from 15th century England, able to tap on a computer keyboard in 20th century England and leave messages for the young couple. Now, I guess I'm thinking about how a caveman would feel if he saw a computer keyboard or a mobile phone. How on earth would somebody from Elizabethan England know how to operate a computer and tap a message out? That was always my problem with the Dodleston messages. I did read the book, The Vertical Plane. I commend it to people because it certainly baffled a lot of investigators from British UFO groups that went and investigated, because apparently some of this phenomena manifested when they were there and they saw some of this happening. So a lot of people vouched for the integrity of the couple that owned the house. And I'd actually love to know. I don't know whether it's still happening, but certainly it was a very interesting British paranormal story, wonderful ghost story, whether it's true or not, where essentially some dude from Elizabethan England starts leaving messages on an old home computer. And as far as I know, it was never disproven, but it was never proven either.
Okay, we have Carolyn, who lives in London, reaching out to us on email. Dear Ross, firstly, thank you for all the time and effort you invest in trying to clarify and expose information which is legitimately belongs to humanity per se. I was fascinated by your interview with Jake Barber. He is both courageous and selfless. I understand and endorse his efforts to control the narrative somewhat because I trust him to be rigorous and exercise moral responsibility with the matter of disclosure. I am equally impressed with the journey Brandon Fugel has both enabled and undergone, and would thank him. His unnerving and dogged determination is inspiring and is unfortunately what it's going to take. Thank you for your recent interview with him. My question is as follows. It has been evident since the first TV series filmed at Skinwalker Ranch that the phenomena is aware of the intention of investigators. Jake's initiative is enabled by the use of psionics, the deliberate use of intentional thought. In your opinion, would it be productive for Travis and Jake to cooperate by creating a joint but discrete supplementary investigation to help clarify how the physical manifestation is related to the forces of intention and telepathy?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. So basically, the idea of getting collaboration between Travis Taylor from Skinwalker Ranch and Jake Barber, who's taken interest in psionics. I can tell you, I don't think I'm giving anything away here. I can tell you that there is going to be a video coming out, I hope relatively soon, from our friends at Skywatcher. That's the Jake Barber, Alex Clokus privately funded group that are investigating UAP phenomena and trying to use psionic summoning and the dog whistle to bring UAP objects, craft close in so that they can be videoed, photographed and studied. They are doing a study on psionics. They've spoken publicly about this in their previous videos. I think they've done interviews where they've talked about the fact that they are going to be studying telepathy and psionics. And I'm really excited. I'm aware of some of the work that they've been doing, and I'm really excited. I'm told they are in the peer review process at the moment, and it's taking a lot longer than expected. I am assured there is no cover-up underway, that they are going to be fully open and transparent, and I'm looking forward at some stage to interviewing either Alex or Jake or somebody from Skywatcher about it. But they are tied up in a very rigorous peer review process that is part of their own internal vetting and checking procedures. But at some stage, very, very soon, quite exciting work that I'm aware of that they've been doing with telepathy will be being made public. Watch this space.
All right, Russ, this viewer is coming from Bali, Indonesia. His name is Steve. Hi, Russ and Megan. Thanks for that great interview with Michael Herrera a while ago. Would you consider interviewing ufologist Timothy Alberino, who investigated similar suspicious black ops militia abducting humans with alien tech down in Peru? Are you familiar with this case? Keep up the good work.
Actually, I have exchanged messages with Tim Alberino, and he is on my list. As we all say, too much reality check is barely enough, and frankly, I just can't keep up with the volume of people that are available to be interviewed and the breadth and magnitude of the stories that we're trying to cover here. It's really exciting, actually. I'm very much enjoying. I thought where I'm living at the moment, I'd be moving into a quiet, gentle, peaceful retirement in the Southern Highlands south of Sydney, maybe doing the odd UFO book and maybe doing the odd interview. It's just unbelievable, the volume of messages and responses that we're getting from people. It's very, very gratifying. And Tim's one of them. He did some great work. I've watched a few of his shows where he actually went down and investigated claims, particularly claims about the abduction or the attempted abduction of, I think, a 15-year-old teenage girl from a tribal community in Brazil, Peru, can't remember which place it was. But she told this harrowing story of this being on some kind of levitating platform coming towards her up a slope, grabbing her and trying to abduct her. Quite a frightening story. And if you take this into the context of the Chubba Chubbas, which we've also spoken about with Ronnie Vernay, a Brazilian friend, we know that there are claims in tribal communities in both Brazil and Peru of often unfriendly beings, often using highly advanced technology that try and abduct locals, particularly young women. So yeah, Tim Alberino has investigated that, and thank you for reminding me. We should get Tim on. That's a great idea. I'm also in touch with Ronnie Vernay, who's doing another trip very soon to northern Brazil, and we're hoping to bring you a story on that at some stage as well.
Okay. Hi, Russ and Megan. Great show. I never miss it and keep up the great work. Question. I know from listening to your recent podcast with guest Dr. Anna BRADY-ESTEVEZ, a scientist, a founding member of a deep tech investment firm, someone who has held directorial positions on many boards that promote learning and investment in science, tech, energy, digital resources, an extremely credible and well-informed individual. The doctor has publicly spoken and confirmed the US and world government's awareness of UAP and that commercial partners are taking the significance and potential of this extremely seriously. This once not so open secret is now not a secret to well-informed business entities. How and when is the knowledge of this going to be broadcast to the general public? Front page stuff, I would have thought. Will we now see capitalist greed overcome humanities right now? Kind regards, Matt.
Well, sometimes capitalist greed does really clever things. And frankly, free enterprise is one of the ways that we've been able to develop technologies. And I just want to applaud Anna BRADY-ESTEVEZ for speaking as frankly as she did to us the other day with Sarah Gam about what she saw over the Congress. We had her on to talk about the weird objects that they saw hovering over the Congress the night prior to the UAP hearing before Congress. They didn't quite land on the White House lawn, but they certainly made themselves known. And more prominently, Anna BRADY-ESTEVEZ, who's an extremely reputable scientist and very, very well connected in space tech, has spoken out quite prominently on the issue of UAPs. She gave a May this year, May 2025 UAP experts panel briefing to Congress. And she described how she co-chaired an interagency working group that included leaders from the NASA, Space Force, the Department of Energy, Department of Health, Human Services. And indeed, there's a podcast, a NASA-sponsored podcast that she was involved in that we spoke about in this program. And I asked her about it, which was just incredible because she had a guy called Richard Bandurek who talked about working with UAP technology. And all credit to Anna, she makes no secret of the fact that she thinks that there is retrieved technology and that everybody knows it and everybody's talking about it. And in her briefing to Congress, she noted that this interagency group that she was part of facilitated UAP leading content discussions, including indications that there was high government awareness and coordination on UAP data and science. She talked about declassification efforts and said that previously classified or unclassified UAP-related work has led to open expert presentations, such as inviting specialists to share extended electrodynamics or dedicated UAP presentations. And perhaps Richard Banduric's presentation that he gave to her podcast was one of them. So this is suggesting that maybe what's happening is that maybe government secrets are slowly being allowed to be revealed through industry discussions such as what she's having. And in the same congressional briefing that she gave in May this year, she actually addressed crash retrievals, UAP crash retrievals, directly. She said, are there crash retrievals? Well, are there crashes? I mean, there's where I live. I mean, a crash seems a lot more interesting than a deer to pick up. And anybody who knows an engineer says the first time you see anything of interest, you're certainly going to reverse engineer it. And I guess this was a very coy way of saying that government and private entities inevitably are going to try and reverse engineer anything that they can retrieve. They would naturally pursue recovery and analysis of UAP crashes. And then she further elaborated. She said, do we just not do certain layering or advancement of certain materials because they've been found in crash retrievals? And that appeared again to coyly suggest that there were UAP-derived materials that were influencing US scientific and engineering advancements. And so I think Dr. BRADY-ESTEVEZ has been quite prominent in sticking her head up, indicating very, very strongly that there is retrieved technology. And on the show, the Good Trouble show recently, my friend Matt Ford, she actually talked about credible sources and high-performing technologies that have emerged from UAP crash retrievals. And she talked about a former CIA director's secret ties to UFOs, UAPs, and extraterrestrials. And she emphasized how such programs have accelerated innovations in lasers, semiconductors, and energy systems. She was pretty damn clear that she thinks that UAP tech has influenced what we've developed. And she also described widespread sightings of ultra-advanced craft that are higher performing, that have been captured on various sensors by innovators in aerospace and energy fields. And she noted that for people that are building the highest performing craft and the highest performing energy, they're not trying to unsee what they've seen. So she implied very, very strongly that these observations do challenge human technological limits and point to non-human origins. And in the congressional briefing, she revealed that 30 to 50% of innovators in closed rooms share personal UAP experiences. And she framed this as a common phenomenon among scientists rather than a fringe belief. She positioned UAPs as an engineering data analysis problem, not folklore. And she talked about funded private companies developing UAP-inspired or UAP-adjacent technologies during her National Science Foundation tenure. She was actually on the board of the National Science Foundation. So she's advocated for US national preparedness and stigma-free research. And she told the podcasts that she's spoken to that transparency is essential as, quote, secret UFO, UAP science and technologies are already changing everything through government and entrepreneurial channels. Overall, she basically made it very, very clear that the US government and private aerospace are up to their necks in UAP technologies. They're just not telling us about it. And I think it's incredibly significant that somebody of the stature and high reputation of Dr. Anna BRADY-ESTEVEZ is willing to speak publicly about this and know that she's not going to suffer stigma, ridicule, or denigration, or threats as a result of her speaking out. And maybe that's where disclosure is going to come from, because I'm sorry, I don't think it's going to come anytime soon from government. Might come from the CIA. I noticed I keep on hoping that people like John Brennan, I heard a whisper that the Age of Disclosure documentary is going to be coming out soon, possibly on a limited cinema release and more broadly, possibly on Prime Amazon. But on that, John Brennan, the former CIA director from 2013 to 2017 under Obama, he was very vocal on UAPs. He's in a 2020 interview, he described Pentagon-released UFO videos as quite eyebrow-raising, emphasizing that while he doesn't know their origins, they warrant serious investigation beyond conventional explanations like foreign adversaries. And he suggested the phenomena might represent a different form of life, leaving open the possibility that it's extraterrestrial. And I understand he's gone a lot further in what he said in Age of Disclosure. And John Ratcliffe, who's the current CIA director, he's worth mentioning, actually. I've made a few notes of what John Ratcliffe has said. He was nominated as the CIA director in late 2024, confirmed by the Senate this year. And in public appearances, John Ratcliffe, the CIA director, has asserted that UAPs demonstrate, quote, technologies that we don't have and, frankly, that we can't defend against. They've been tracked by multiple sensors, including satellites, and he's ruled out the explanation that they might be illusions or drones. He criticised the Biden administration for withholding information, claiming, quote, the government has more information than it's sharing. And he promised more revelations once declassified. And during his DNI tenure, when he was the Director of National Intelligence, Ratcliffe pushed for declassification, noting that there'd been sightings all over the world with no clear explanation. And he's vowed to be more open. So fingers crossed from Tulsi Gabbard in DNI and John Ratcliffe in CIA, we might see a move for greater disclosure, because it's sure as hell not going to come from Congress by the looks of it.
Okay, Russ, we have time for one more. Adrian reached out to me on X and he says, ask Ross if I can take him for a beer next time he's in Melbourne. I promise I won't ask him anything about UAPs.
Oh, bollocks. Of course you'd ask me about UAPs. I'd love to talk about UAPs. You don't have to buy me a beer, but I'm very happy to have a beer with you. One of the gratifying things about doing this story is when I was on 60 Minutes, quite often people would walk up to me in airports and abuse me about my latest story. They'd say, "You mongrel, you got no idea what you're talking about. You got it all wrong." And the lovely thing about doing this story is the level of positive public feedback that I get frequently. It's actually quite weird. I'll walk through any airport or public space. I'm generally stopped by someone saying how much they love the show, how much they appreciate it. When I was in the United States in May, every single airport that I went through, I was stopped by people multiple times and told how much they appreciated the show. And can I tell you, it's very gratifying. I love it. I really enjoy the fact that you like the show. We're very gratified that we're in the top 50 podcasts for the United States. You like what we're doing, and we're going to keep on doing it for you. And just echoing what I said in last week's show about the level of unpopularity of mainstream media, I think 28% of people trust the media, which is a ridiculously lower number. I think the figure was 8% of Republicans trust the mainstream media. I like to think that people trust us on Reality Check because we do try and talk warts and all about the UAP issue and all the other subjects that are so taboo the mainstream media won't touch it with a barge pole. So please keep on listening to us, and thank you very, very much for your gratifying response. And yes, mate, next time I'm in Melbourne, let's have that beer.
Okay, Ross, that is all for today. We are done.
Thank you very, very much, Meagan. And of course, if you want to send us questions, you can send me an email at realitycheck@newsnationnow.com. And please don't forget, too much Reality Check is barely enough. You can now listen again to Reality Check on all of the known podcast sites, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. and all the others. You can just put Reality Check, Ross Coulthart, NewsNation into the search engine, and you will find us there. You can listen to us while you drive, while you shower, while you lie in bed, because too much Reality Check is barely enough. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Meagan.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.